Millions of voters in the U.S. will cast their ballots in today's presidential election. Behind the scenes, Indigenous-led advocacy organizations have been working tirelessly to get Indigenous voters to the polls. Michelle Spark is the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Get Out the Native Vote in Alaska. She says that in northern communities, democracy begins at the post office.
When we have chronic postal issues and chronic staffing issues with the election workers, working in these small communities, you're going to have mistakes. You're going to have stuff that costs your vote being fully counted.
For Election Day, Spark and her team are helping fill those gaps.
So we're ready to dispatch up to 10 workers to different villages so that they will have a worker on Election Day.
On the West Coast, Executive Director Alyssa Macy and the Native Vote Washington team have been knocking on doors and mailing educational pamphlets. But Macy says Indigenous voters living in rural and tribal communities may face additional challenges.
In some communities, they don't have a voting box. So driving to town, for some people, assuming you have a car, is a relatively easy thing to do. But what if you don't have a car? What if you're an elder with, limited means to get around?
APTN spoke to University of British Columbia political science professor Stuart Prest about what's at stake for Indigenous voters in the U.S.
We have a vastly different view of Indigenous rights and the place of Indigenous peoples in the United States and by extension on both sides of the border between the two candidates. I think the stakes are high, and that's the sort of thing that can mobilize voters, Indigenous voters in this case, to actually show up, because it really does matter.
The election comes less than 2 weeks after outgoing President Joe Biden apologized for the U.S. Indian boarding school system. Macy says the apology must be followed by action.
What is the process to heal from that? Like, what are the resources invested to support that type of healing? Those are questions that I personally have.
2024 also marks the 100th anniversary of the U.S. Indian Citizenship Act. While the fight for Native American rights continues, Macy believes this election is an opportunity.
To see where Native people show up and have this impact, I think is just an opportunity for us to be visible in the states that we reside in, and to demonstrate that we have influence and we have power, and we are going to use that to elect people that care about the things that we need for our communities.
The polls will begin to close Tuesday evening, but with such a tight race, it could take days before a winner is declared. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.